Okay, so this next final session is based on all kinds of good information that I've shared and I've also heard from fellow solution architects in NVIDIA, as well as our partners at Citrix and VMware, about things that happen in POCs that make it go bad. Okay, number one. 多分there's probably not 10. There might be a little bit more than 10, but if we have enough time, I'll get through all of them. So for the first, big mistake is not defining the POC success criteria with stakeholders. So if you're designing a solution for designers or engineers without consulting with them what they need to be productive, then that's going to be a very difficult POC to succeed. You need to define measurable metrics. Many times people say, I want fast performance. But performance means many different things to many different people or users. Next is to actually use the real applications and data. Don't use benchmarks. Don't try to simulate users using a benchmark. That's not what a user is going to use the system for. And please don't use spec viewperf to simulate multiple users. If you want to measure the raw single VM performance, then please use it to use that to evaluate how fast a Tesla M60 is versus a K2000 or K2200. So the next big mistake is attempting to add the POC environment into an existing IT infrastructure. You should always try to do the POC first in an isolated and controlled environment. So that might mean building or acquiring network switches. You might have to have your own Active Directory set up, SQL server or SQL server, excuse me. But when you have that controlled environment, you allow yourself to build the environment and then keep that so that way in the future, if you move to a trial or deployment, you have the isolated environment to do tuning or troubleshooting. Now, some customers might say, we can't do an isolated environment because we need to have access to a license server in our existing deployment or existing infrastructure. And to that, I say, set up a gateway to forward the IP requests to the licensing server, and your problem solved. So the next common mistake is to not understand the application resource requirements. Oh, he's taking a picture. Okay, thank you. So during typical user workloads, what is the performance limiting factor? Is the application CPU or memory bound? In the former or the previous session, we looked together about when doing modeling operations. It was very clear in that use case for that type of user, the bottleneck was not the CPU, it wasn't the GPU. The application was running at its full performance without any bottleneck. But do you remember the graph where it showed spec viewperf in perfmon and the GPU is all the way up and then down and up and down? Those are the sort of patterns you're trying to look through in perfmon using the actual application data sets to find out if you have a limitation on GPU frame buffer or if you have a GPU rendering limitation. So if you have an existing workstation with an NVIDIA GPU, in perfmon you can add there's several counters. If you look for NVIDIA underbar GPU, there's several counters in there you can add to your collector set or monitor real time to look to see how the application is using the GPU. Another common mistake is not using all available resources of information. So on NVIDIA's website, we have a few deployment guides, and we've started creating application sizing guides that give general guidance about certain applications, how many users per GPU you can typically add with different workloads. Also, our partners Citrix and VMware also have reviewers' guides and best practices that should be studied and learned and used when doing a POC. Another big mistake is attempting to use non-grid certified servers. There's many types of grid cards. They look similar, but they might have different airflow patterns. They might have specific BIOSes for specific types of servers. And now we have the Tesla M60 and M6. They have different power requirements as well. That's why it's important to have a certified server, and not every card might physically fit, but it might not work in every server. So we have lots of different servers that are certified. This is all available. In more updated information is all available on the website. Just nvidia.com/buygrid, and you can find a list of certified servers from all of our OEM partners. Next big mistake is the optimal CPUs for the workload are not used. So most CAD applications are very single-threaded. So when we were looking in the previous section at the graphs, we could see that the CPU utilization rarely went over 20% because I had 8 core or 8 logical cores. If it was highly multi-threaded, you would see that on high demand or high resource operations, you would have seen the CPU utilization go higher to 100%. So because it's very highly single-threaded, or most are highly single-threaded, that you need to focus on having high CPU frequency, not high core count. Because that single thread would operate much faster to complete the operation rather than have multiple cores that will do nothing for it. Yeah, the next big problem is in the server, not setting the server's BIOS profile to use maximum performance. If you use energy efficient, you're going to have the CPU using a lower power state by default, and that can affect performance significantly bad. And if you have bad performance and you have many people using it, they're all going to have a very bad experience. So we want to ensure that every CPU core can reach its maximum clock speed based on this setting. Did you get that? Torimashita ka? Okay. Also, servers don't have enough memory. So in a virtual machine that has a vGPU, also vDGA. Memory overcommit is not supported. So you need to have enough memory. If your user requires 4 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM, that needs to be allocated before the virtual machine can start up. You can't dynamically size the memory for GPU-enabled virtual machines. Here, these are just some general sizing suggestions of how much memory per virtual machine would be recommended. Now, NVIDIA is not a storage company, but we can see the impact of having slow storage on application load time. And 5 more minutes. So make sure you have enough IOPS, because most of workstation users want maximum performance. So they probably already have local workstation SSDs, and they expect that level of performance in their virtual machine as well. Another big issue, as something we just experienced, is not having adequate network environment for VDI. So in the virtual machine settings, some hypervisors or some companies, their default virtual network device is a legacy, highly compatible network device. It's the worst performing possible option. So when you're setting up a virtual machine, always check your network device to make sure that it's the VMXNet3 setting, not the E1000. You also need to confirm the network ability to deliver enough bandwidth. So my recommendation and my experience with many different customers is to use iPerf. You use it as a server, as a client, and you can simulate 3 megabits of traffic, whether it's UDP or TCP traffic. And then you can say, okay, I want to scale that to 16 users at 3 megabits and run that and see if the network can support that data stream, or if you find out that then all your streams are suffering problems, to identify network issues before you try to deploy. Also, not assigning enough vCPUs for the virtual machine. Our recommendation, you should have a minimum of 4 vCPUs for any vGPU-enabled virtual machine, or vDGA. You should have a minimum of 2 vCPUs for the application to use. 1 vCPU available for the OS and for system calls, where the application will call system calls. And then, because currently both Citrix and VMware are using CPU-based video encoding, you'll need at least 1 vCPU to do all the encoding, which is highly single-threaded. So having at least 4 should give you a good balance between all the different pieces in the virtual machine to deliver fairly good performance. If you go below that, all these different applications and processes will start to cause contention on the virtual CPUs. I only have 20 more slides. Okay, that's not funny, right? See what I said. So, not optimizing the virtual machine base image. 1 minute, I'll ipun. So when we're creating virtual machines, typically we create a base image, and then that base image we create link clones to maintain one image and then have copies of that for all the different types of users. If that base image is not optimized, then all those users will be having worse performance on the same servers, which causes overall performance decreases. So for Citrix, they have a tool called Target OS Optimizer you can use to run on your virtual machine before you start to create your golden master image. And then Citrix has their VMware OS optimization tool. You would run this before you create the golden image to disable services and to optimize lots of settings. So that was basically the last of the POC mistakes. But I did say that one mistake is not to use all the different sources of information. And so on our website, if you go to nvidia.com/grid, we have white papers, application guides, deployment guides, customer success stories. We've added our new Grid 2.0 data sheets and frequently asked questions. We have videos, not my videos, but better videos, and blogs. So please check our website. If there's something you don't understand or you think that it would be valuable for your customers to have translated into Japanese, please let us know. I'm not a good translator, unless you want to say my name is Jeremy. You know, I can translate the Japanese, but we would consider translating information if it makes it easier for your customers or whomever to understand the technology better. Does anyone have any questions about POC issues, or if you have something you'd like to share about POCs? Or if you want to tell a joke, that's fine too. Is anyone doing a POC right now as a customer or as a system integrator? Zannen. Oh, one is. Okay, thank you. Do you want to talk about it? So, どうぞ日本語か英語か韓国語
日本語
わかんないけど。
でよろしくお願いします。POC の環境を立ててるんですけども、やはりパフォーマンスの測定時は、ユーザーさんに実際使っていただくことが重要だということをお話にもありましたが、FPS そのフレームレートですねで、測定するということはあまりその現実的ではないんでしょうか。
Sorry, I didn't hear the which part. どういうFPS。はい。その FPS が
FPS を、見ることでその本番に適用できるできないとかっていう判断がこうできないのかなと。
So let me see if I'm getting this correctly. So you're wondering if just judging the frames per second, if you can use that criteria for determining if the POC is a success or not. No. So frames per second, there's rendered frames per second on the GPU, and then there's delivered frames per second via the remoting protocol. If you have, excuse me, if you have a bad network environment and you're not able to deliver the frames per second, after you improve the network condition, the frames per second will increase if you have sufficient CPU resources to encode the video stream. Jonas, did you have a question?
Tell you a joke if you like.
Okay, tell me a joke, please. He probably doesn't have one.
Why did the orange stop halfway up the hill?
Because he forgot his GPU.
He ran out of juice.
Okay. Does anyone have a good joke? That didn't translate, I'm sure. Well, I hope you learned something else besides this. The previous section we talked about monitoring. This one we talked about things that can go wrong in a POC. I believe that these slides will probably be posted on the GTC Japan website. I'm not sure if they've recorded video or audio of the presentation. So for the people that weren't able to take pictures, you could talk to me after this session. I can give you my card. And for a small deposit of 5,000 yen, I can give you all the materials. Actually, it's free. So if you have any questions, if you're too shy to ask questions in front of everyone, after the session, I'll be here for about 30 seconds. So ask your question quickly.
I actually have one. Sorry. So you're talking about, in the previous session you had a white paper that you're working on right now, and
Yes.
I'm very much looking forward to that because it's got a lot of stuff in it that I think would be super useful. When do you think you'll be done?
Well, usually white papers are a mythical object. So yeah, they're mythical.
Might be a while then, yeah?
I would hope that it would be, let's see, it's September now. So in the next 2 years, maybe?
Great, looking forward to it.
No, I'm hoping probably in end of October timeframe.
Thank you.
But don't quote me on that. Okay, thank you very much. ありがとうございました。